Welcome back to the show, guys. Our episode today is really about the gut microbiome, and my guest is Dr. Grace Liu, otherwise known as the Gut Goddess. She is the founder of the Gut Institute, and she is all about the microbiome. Now, one of the things that Dr. Grace has also dove into quite heavily over the last couple of years, actually, are peptides. And so we talk about peptides, we talk about gut health, we talk about the microbiome, we talk about all those things. So Dr. Grace is an authority in this area. She has just released a practitioner course. So if you're a medical doctor or a functional medicine practitioner and you're listening to this episode, you're going to want to check that out. You can go to thegutinstitute.com/Nat. You can get information about the practitioner course. And for those of you who are not practitioners, you can actually go shopping for some of the amazing products that we talk about here, and you can save 10% with discount code NAT10. And I'm actually pretty sure that that discount code might save you a few bucks on that practitioner course as well. So you're going to want to check out the episode first to drink in some of her wisdom. And then you might just have to go to thegutinstitute.com. And if you're looking for Dr. Grace herself, you can also find her on Instagram as the Gut Goddess. So check out the episode. You know how grateful I always am to have you here. If you get value from this episode and you know anybody else who you think would as well, then make sure that you forward it to your friends, your family, your networks, wherever. And if you're feeling inspired, make sure to leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening to this to, because this is how we get found by more people just like you. So to connect with me, you can go to my website, natniddam.com, and that's where you can also learn about my new Mighty Networks community called the BSP community. And in that community, not only do you get to do live Q&As with me, but you also get live Q&As with a lot of the experts that I host on the podcast. And I'm pretty sure that at some point in the next few months, Dr. Grace is going to be there as well. So thank you so much for being here. Totally appreciate you guys. Enjoy. Hey, folks, just a quick reminder that all of the information presented in this podcast is for information purposes only. No medical advice, no diagnosing, no treatments suggested here. Before you try anything that you hear about or learn about here, make sure that you check with your medical provider. All right, welcome to the podcast, Dr. Grace Liu. It is a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Natalie. Such a pleasure.
Yeah, well, it's a gift to have you. We met in Vegas in person for the first time last September. I was totally starstruck because I'm like, oh my God, this is the Gut Goddess herself. And literally that is your handle on Instagram. And talking to you for 10 minutes, I'm like, oh my God, she really is the Gut Goddess and the founder of the Gut Institute, which is so aptly named. So Grace, I wanted to ask you, just as we start here, as a pharmacist, what got you into this line of work? Like, as a pharmacist, you could have gone anywhere. Typically, we think of pharmacists as those people behind the counter that count out our pills. And if we're lucky, might give us a piece of advice when we're taking a prescription. But you've gone so far beyond that. So maybe tell us a little bit about your journey and how you came to be the Gut Goddess of the Gut Institute.
Yeah, it's been a kind of convoluted journey for sure. Like a lot of people who get into biohacking or integrative functional medicine. I actually started off, I was a extended care kind of pharmacist. So I had extra clinical training. I had a residency at the VA, a beautiful location in La Jolla, and also had teaching responsibilities. So I had adjunct professorship and taught at 2 pharmacy schools and had residents and PharmD candidates rotate with me and lectured. And I love the component where we were, teaching about evidence-based medicine. It was all evidence-based medicine based, how to reduce high blood pressure. I taught a lot of group classes as well, diabetes. I was an educator for certified diabetes education and, did a lot of insulin starts, so injections and carb counting with folks. And, what struck me as, the internet, widened our understanding of things, I was able to pull primary literature, and I was doing these lectures for like peptic ulcer or PMDD, which is premenstrual syndrome in women. And these medications had hardly any improvement over placebo. And then I had, patients and managed some of their medications or did counseling with them. And some would just reduce like gluten or stop dairy gluten. And literally they get off 7, 8, 20 drugs.
Wow.
One lady, she was in a wheelchair. Her rheumatologist referred her to me because she wanted to stop all her meds. And I had to counsel her, don't stop your medications, polypharmacy, but hey, if you're interested, if you and your family are interested, just stop gluten. She had polyrheumatology with no NOS, no known reason. Like it wasn't rheumatoid, it wasn't OA. She stopped gluten. Literally, she came to me in a wheelchair with her family. Literally the next visit, she came back, she was out of her wheelchair. And then she told me, I'm not coming back, Grace. I got to go run around and go live my life. And she was like giving testimonials at her church. Her family were ecstatic and happy. She was able to gain her life back. So this is when I really learned the power of diet, nutrition. I mean, I'm so grateful. I've always been into nutritional science. My background I went to UC Berkeley, and studied food science and nutrition. I mean, I was always overweight. I was hoping I would get the holy grail, how to lose weight, in my teens and 20s and even my early 30s. I was really overweight. And, with childbirth, like I have 2 kids. And with each child, I gained like 70, 80 pounds. Like I was one of those celebrities who just went crazy. And it was actually easy to lose weight after each birth because you know what? I wasn't on birth control.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was really heavily damaged by artificial hormones. So the synthetic things really don't work for me. So I love like this world of peptides you've opened up for me, Natalie. I mean, you're such an amazing integrator of information and educator, teacher, guider, full of wisdom, because these are bioidentical little hormones basically, and they heal the body, right? They're made in a factory, but they're bioidentical as much as far as we know. So I had my healing journey. I kind of hit this slump 13 years ago with chronic fatigue. Earlier, I had Hashimoto's and probably other autoimmune diseases, but the only one I was aware of is Hashimoto's. And that's prevalent in my family. My dad's a doctor, a surgeon. We got every antibiotic under the earth. So talk about overutilization, that we were like poster child. And then each one of my siblings, we developed an autoimmune disease. My parents don't understand it. They're both doctors and they think we're weird. They're fine, healthy, but they also got like, they didn't have running water. They didn't have toilets growing up. They lived in dirt. Their favorite probiotic, that's called dirt.
Mother Nature's probiotic. If you can get
exactly
dirt not filled with chemicals these days, which is its own problem.
Right. And they also rarely got antibiotics. They rarely got healthcare, So if someone got asthma, they usually would die. If they got pneumonia, usually they would die, right? Or malaria, if it was severe enough, they would just die. So I'm grateful for antibiotics. I have had various health crises, and I need an antibiotic. So I'm really grateful for where we've come. But now we need tech to kind of get us out of where we are, because now tech has created this bubble of disease, epidemic of psychosis, crazy, mental illness. Now we need a little tech to get us out. So I'm really grateful for all the tools available, because we have all the protocols and evidence-based medicine actually to get us out of it. And I teach on our platform, the Gut Institute, to clinicians, coaches, integrative doctors about the protocols that really, really work. And they're all followed up and backed up by evidence-based medicine. A lot of it's microbiome medicine. I'm really grateful for different academic folks like Patrice Canny out in Belgium. He's really made the connection, and his articles in the PNAS and New England Journal all over the place, really share how the connection is between chronic illnesses and mental diseases as well with our microbiome, and how manipulation of the microbiome, will fix a lot of it. And so I love actually going into PubMed. You can put in manipulating or microbiome manipulation. You'll find amazing articles, because this is exactly what we do. We do little protocols. Sometimes we have to use pharmaceuticals even. So, tech will help us get out of where we are. And potent probiotics. When I went to pharmacy school, no one of us would have thought like poop would cure anybody or save a life. That eating poop, would save a life. But now we do. We have evidence of that. There are clinical trials that literally show 80 to 100% recovery of Clostridium difficile colitis, which is a lethal, life-threatening disease. It kills over 45,000 people a year, depending on the country you look at. And this is it's a common condition which is a result of overuse of our tech, overuse of antibiotics.
Right. So the fetal
Transplant, yeah, poop transplant, FMT.
the FMTs, those are, but still very specialized. I mean, I think that you have to be careful where
There
you
are caveats. Yeah, I would consider that there are a lot of caveats. Yeah.
I think she was in my group. There was a woman who couldn't find a doctor that would help her with the FMT for her son. And she somehow knew that this kid, like, I think he was in such rough shape. And she knew that her boy needed a fecal transplant. And she convinced her husband to be the donor. And, keeping it in the family. So, which is kind of cool, right? Because the tricky thing with the FMTs is you're getting genetic material, like you're getting all kinds of stuff here.
Yeah.
And in her case, for her son, it was transformative. It was a small young child. They encapsulated the fecal matter.
Okay.
You take it as a capsule. And to your point.
Yeah, so there's a couple reviews, where they drill down the factors that help. One is actually familial, if it's in the family. Yeah, I don't know if it's because of genetics and there's less immune, misalignment.
Yeah,
that's the problem when there's immune misalignment with a broad, academic center that does a FMT. They're getting 10, 20, 30 donors into one sample. So it's a lot of microbes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they don't screen for a lot of things. They can't. They don't screen. They only screen, for the basic things. But they're probably likely missing a lot of viral overgrowths, fungal overgrowths, co-infections, even STDs. That are off the radar. Maybe they're only screening the major microbes, but they're missing a lot. And yeah, when you get into like 20, 30 donors, that's kind of creepy.
It's a lot of, that you're taking a lot of chances at that point, right? And
also partly why they work is in an academic center, they give an antifungal and an antibacterial.
Okay.
The prep, right? So in our protocols, we do use botanicals, and then if necessary, certain pharmaceuticals, depending on the state of someone coming in, because once, there's a certain number of overgrowths, it's not harmful when we have plenty of probiotics. The key is the number. So within FMT, they probably get about 1 trillion bacteria in the dosage. Mm-hmm. Like usually, put it with water, 100 cc's, and they do a nasal gastric tube or a tube directly to the jejunum. So you don't smell it necessarily, totally, but, or capsules, poop capsules. I prefer curated.
Yeah.
Microbiome, type of replacements. So we know there's like a number of keystone flora that are important. When we're starting to miss that, that's like a wealth count. If you start missing all your assets, your overall wealth is just going to go down, your wealth index. So we want diversification, right? And then you want like, diversification into, different things, stable things like bonds, right? And then stock is a percentage. Real estate's a percentage. So that's like our real estate in our gut lining as well too. We have Akkermansia. Mm-hmm. It's 1 to 5% of healthy stools. And then we have bifidos. I call these the ABCs. So bifidos are really missing in the Western world because of antibiotics, mostly antibiotics. A lot of women don't know, if you get induced with Pitocin, you get an IV antibiotic while you're in the hospital. They're wiping out all your microbiome and your milk, the flora in the milk, and your next generation is not likely to get anything good. Yeah, so bifidos always missing in actually every study I look at, bifido longum, and our probiotic is the highest strength in the market, in the industry. Most probiotics, like if you look at consumer labs at the time of manufacture, or comparing time of manufacture to time of delivery, they're only overstuffed by 10 to 15%. We overstuff by 500 to 800%. Like when we say 100 billion on here, we actually have 500 to 800 billion.
Wow. Yeah.
And so we stand behind the product. I wanted something that really worked. It's not highly profitable, as you can imagine, compared to other brands, but I stand behind it, and it really, really works. That's why we have phenomenal shifts in health with people who do our programs, particularly the gut reset. And because it's overstuffed, it's almost like an FMT dose when we get up to 10 capsules a day. So, because it's 100 billion, getting up to 10, you're getting about 1 trillion. And if you're lucky, maybe 5 to 10 trillion, actually. Right. That's almost an FMT value for what's missing, highly, highly missing in all our mucosa. For women, even our breast tissues have a microbiome. Men and women, our bladder tissues have a microbiome. Nothing's sterile. Placenta is not sterile. That was discovered, not long ago. Yeah, so the B is bifido, but we also have half our gut is Bacteroides. And then the C is Clostridioides. Clostridioides are really important because they make something, a postbiotic called butyrate.
Yes.
Half our gut, makes 60% of the saturated fats that floating around in our bloodstream. They're called volatile because you can kind of smell them. They taste buttery, smell buttery, they smell pukey a little. But butyrate, as you know, is very healing. We have capsules of butyrate now, or infusions or enemas of butyrate that heal the gut, colitis. They're excellent, excellent. You can eat a lot of butter, but you probably eat like 10, 20 pounds. I calculated once. It's a lot of butter. You can do your bulletproof, but it's not exactly the same thing.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, so Clostridioides is the other half of our gut. 40 to 60% is Bacteroides B. Another 40 to 60% is Clostridioides. It kind of depends on your enterotype. If you eat more lentils, grains, you're a certain type. And then if you eat more meat, Bacteroides is kind of omnivorous in the gut. It eats everything, including protein and fats. Clostridioides, they eat more straight up fiber, especially complex carbs, cooked resistant starches, the outside of the husk of a grain or lentil or bean. Okay, so this is how we feed the gut, and this has been since the dawn of time. Since the dawn of time, we nibbled on veggies and stems and leaves and twigs and shit. Usually herbivore shit, like giraffe shit or rhino shit.
Well, it's funny because people often will say, since the beginning of time, if you could catch a woolly mammoth, it was a lot easier to feed a tribe off of woolly mammoth than it would off of leaves and twigs and whatever, but the woolly mammoth was the luxury food in between woolly mammoth successful kills or hunts, if you will. Mm-hmm. We would be opportunistic feeders, right? We would have to eat whatever the heck we could catch, which was probably easier things that are inert and can't possibly kill you back. So yeah. I think that, there's some interesting narratives in the world right now. And I do think that we'll never win by going to one extreme or the other. I think that if we're smart, we recognize that the human entity was born to be omnivorous. And we have to refine our balance in the environment we're in, which has nothing to do with the environment we were in back then. Right? Our ancestors didn't have to deal with EMFs and didn't have to deal with pollution to the degree that we do, or so many, they dealt with stress, probably chronic stress, because they were pretty sure that around every tree trunk, there was something waiting to kill them or eat them or whatever. So I think this idea that they lived these idyllic lives that were free of stress is probably this fairy tale notion that we've created for ourselves.
Yeah, probably. I kind of concur. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I've gone hiking and camping. It's like, well, what the fuck? How do you find food out here? Like, it's pretty tough. It's pretty darn tough. I would easily lose weight like within a few weeks.
So, okay, so we know our three main species, let's say, are the Akkermansia, the Bacteroides, and the Clostridioides.
Yes.
One of the things I think that, and we've talked a little bit about FMT, which I didn't think we were going to, but we did. So what I think there's a lot of confusion before we get into specifics about, talking about the microbiome for immunity or dealing with gut healing and stuff like that. Before we get there, I think there's a lot of confusion in the market about people they're like, okay, so my microbiome's a mess. So how do I test my microbiome? Because really, we don't yet have the holy grail of what the perfect microbiome is. There may not be a perfect microbiome, but we know that some are better than others. Should they just, and we get this question all the time, like, should children be taking probiotics? And what probiotics should people be taking? I know that when I went to school for nutrition, what I was taught is, yeah, sure, probiotics are great, but don't be taking the same ones over and over again, because ultimately, the diversity that you need in your gut can't possibly be addressed by one single probiotic. Because, people, they find a brand they like, and that's the religion, right? So what are your thoughts on probiotics and that?
Yeah, there's There's not enough studies really, honestly, but the few studies, that I love looking at responders and non-responders when I look at a probiotic study, because there's usually reasons why, a certain outcome happens. And what's so lovely about microbiome studies, they do heat maps. So really, literally, they can look at individual responders and heat map out like the different species, because there's, it's 100 trillion bacteria. It's 1-to-1 to the cells we have in our own bodies, our nucleated and non-nucleated cells. We're literally 1-to-1 cells. Their cells just happen to be smaller, but we're the entity wise, like it really is like us, our other person, our best side maybe. And so when it comes to probiotics, there are a lot, some, we just don't have studies that show diversity or show like, oh, what's going to be the best long term. Not like even with bioregulators or peptides, we've got some of those Russian studies where they study someone, oh, they're telling me you're 16% longer after taking bioregulators, like, 10 years, blah, blah, blah. But we don't quite have that with currently in the probiotic field, sadly. But I'll tell you a couple studies that I really love. And one is a group of studies collectively. If you join any of my programs, like my microbiome medicine conferences, we have the CEUs up if you want to purchase it, if you're a health coach or a non-health coach or clinician, but we have 7 units. And I go over the studies where we go through chronic conditions, and there's a legacy in our microbiome. And there's a lot of great European studies that there's a strict number, maybe about 13 to 16 keystone flora. And when people are missing them, they correspond to disease, basically. And when they look at healthy controls, they look at cancer-free controls, they look at diabetes-free, chronic disease-free controls, particularly in Europe. Okay, I don't like looking at US data. It's usually pretty flawed. What in Europe they find is there's about 13 to 16 species that are found in every healthy person. Centenarian, cancer disease-free, cancer-free, chronic disease-free. These are truly healthy people. They're not mentally ill. They're not physically ill. They're not sarcopenic.
Yeah.
They're not metabolic syndrome. That's our US population, right? Even our healthiest is metabolic syndrome. So, yeah. So I love these studies, and I share it in the course because we need to get this information out. And if you hear US microbiome researchers, they're idiots. They think the US people are like the bomb, but they don't look at they ignore the European data. Like there are a number of keystone flora found in everybody. Right. And these are particularly the ones I was telling you about, the Akkermansia and then Bifidolongum. Yeah. And for C, it's Christiansenella and many of the Clostridiolis, the high butyrate producers. There's good and bad, there's Roseburia, inulins and Roseburia. There's a number of them that are associated with disease. Okay. But there's also some Roseburia that are associated with, with health. Okay. But there's also some associated with diabetes. And then same with, Faecalibacterium prausnitzii, usually it's associated with health. Okay. There's other species that are butyrate producers, but they're overgrowing in obese. They're overgrowing in diabetes. So they have high butyrate, actually. Now we're seeing the last 10 years, a lot of high butyrate cases, but they're overgrowing in the wrong place. It's SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Yeah. So it's just like a wealth portfolio, wealth portfolios have debt sometimes, right? What you usually hope is mortgage debt, right? Yeah. Not short-term, whatever, credit card, gambling, whatever, high APR debt, right?
Yeah.
There's different levels of debt. So there's also different levels of Clostridiolis. I talk about Clostridiolis in general, but within the species and the different strains going on there, we have a differentiate. It's like a mob family. Okay. Sometimes there's in a mob, let's say, okay, they're all like sort of criminals, sort of, right? If you watch Sopranos or whatever, but there's some good ones sometimes, right? But they're all in the same family, right? That's like our species in the gut. You can have the outliers. Mm-hmm. They're not bad or good. They're all in a way balancing. We need them actually just as much as others. We need yeast, actually, Candida. I'm not anti-Candida or any of that, or, Candida diet, blah, blah, blah. I think Candida has a lot of roles in our body. They chelate. I had a problem with mercury and heavy metals. A lot of people usually do. If you don't have a healthy amount of Candida, you can't chelate the heavy metals out. They make B vitamins. Guess where vegans get their freaking B vitamins? From yeast flakes.
Yeah. So it's interesting, I think what I'm hearing you saying and what I've always believed about the gut is, and to your point, it's not about good or bad. It's about balance, right? It's about, I think the more educated people, maybe people that have gone through your course, talk about an overgrowth
Yeah.
absence of versus you have candida. Well, yeah, I got candida. I also have H. pylori. I need some H. pylori. I don't.
Yes.
I mean, I remember reading a study once years ago where they showed that, and I mean, maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but I'm pretty sure what they said is when they wiped H. pylori out completely out of the gut, people became obese. Like they actually developed other diseases. And it's because, you know, there's this kind of, I guess at first we have this oversimplified view of how things work. And the gut is so mysterious, right? That we're like, oh my God, H. pylori, that causes ulcers. We must wipe it out completely. And then the next thing you know, you've caused another problem, or you've allowed another opportunistic species to take over for wiped out.
And the way they wipe out H. pylori is using 2 antibiotics. It's the best way to grow yeast. And if you look at Petri tree studies and the ecosystem of our gut, H. pylori houses within Candida. It lives in Candida.
You're kidding.
That's why you'll never eradicate H. pylori. And you don't want to. There's a CAG plus strain of H. pylori. It's highly protective against one of the most lethal cancers known as adenocarcinoma. Literally, it kills people within 3 to 5 years.
Wow.
If they're over age 40, 50. And I used to have asthma. And I went through all these studies, like, how did I get asthma? Well, if you're missing CAG plus H. pylori, it's a higher risk for asthma as well. There's a lot of conditions related to asthma, but I thought that was very intriguing and incredible. Yeah, but you're right. It's oversimplified. We don't want to just like target one species and try to knock it out. That's not how the terrain management is optimized. It really is an ecosystem. And actually, there's a lot of game theory in the microbiome space when they talk about the ecosystem. I'm not a gamer, but I find it fascinating. There's players and leaders and then.
It's anthropomorphic. I can never say that word.
Yeah, I can't either. Anthropomorphic.
Yeah, and by now everybody knows what I'm trying to say. When you assign kind of a personality and personification to an inanimate object, right? And we talk about the good ones and the bad ones and how they interact. And now we've got a little city going on and then a universe. But the fact is that it's incredibly complex. And I think that our diet has a big piece. Like, it's not just about probiotics. I think how we feed, and I learned a lot of this in school, and then it was re-highlighted by someone we both know, Joel Green, who talks about this so much in his book and in his teachings, which is about what are the foods that you're feeding in your gut? Because it's that whole idea again of going as far upstream in the body as possible and letting things fall out, because the butyrate, if you're producing appropriate amounts of butyrate in the gut, that will help to heal your mucus layer. That will help with your.
And Paleolithic studies seem to show like our ancestors might have eaten 100 to 130 grams of fiber a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And our diet's pale in comparison. The paleo diet is one of the worst. It's like 1 to 3 grams of fiber a day, unless you're eating, beans and lentils are one of the strongest sources of prebiotics, and fiber from fruits and apples. So like, I love Akkermansia. We have many berries and fruits that feed Akkermansia. It actually loves anything also oligosaccharide related, GOS, XOS, FOS, inulin.
Yeah.
Akkermansia feeds on mucus. So anything mucousy, like taro and other tubers and roots. The glucomannan, which comes from konjac, is also a big, big feeder of Akkermansia, but it likes the bitter things. It loves polyphenols.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I have a feeling like through evolutionary time, we developed a high amount of Akkermansia in our gut and housed it there and attracted it there by eating gooey tubers. Every ethnic nation has some kind of tuber they enjoy. And when you heat it up, it still retains its properties as being cooked resistant starch because acid, stomach acid, keeps it as a fiber. And we don't really get it doesn't have a glycemic load much.
Right. But for something like a potato, for example, and I'm talking about white potatoes now, not sweet potatoes, because they behave differently, but a white potato that's been cooked and then allowed to cool even for, I think even for 15 minutes.
the fibers are still present, the prebiotic nature of it. And then let's say so they had a Thai noodle study. Thai noodles, as you know, they use a lot of acid, lime, lemons. The acidity of the soup keeps the noodle as a low glycemic food.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And if you have proper acidity in your gut, most people don't if they're unhealthy. You can replicate it though. Drink warm apple cider vinegar or warm lemon juice at a meal. You're going to replicate what your gut might be making. Our gut technically goes to pH 1 or 2. It's a lot of acid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it acidifies and makes starches into fiber to feed Akkermansia as well as Clostridioides.
Right. And then, okay, so, and that's also like for people who just don't have enough stomach acid and the apple cider vinegar is not enough for them, we might supplement with hydrochloric acid for a period of time.
For our clients, we do that only in the first phase at all, because by the second phase, they've healed and making their own acid again. The goal is to replicate all our rhythms, peptide rhythms, hormone rhythms, adrenal rhythms, diurnal as well as nocturnal, get the HRV in line. Oxytocin rhythms is a really important one. So part of gut healing, we approach people for in our classes, courses, and our one-on-one clients is looking at the heart gut axis.
Interesting.
Yeah, and this helps bring our probiotics up. When we're healthier, when we have better hormones, we're in a low stress situation. Our bacteria literally will resurrect.
Well, that makes sense, right? Because we talk about how chronic stress destroys the microbiome.
Exactly, it does. Our pathogens like E. coli and others, they have actually genicity islands in their DNA pattern, okay? Cortisol and adrenaline literally bind these pathogenicity islands in their DNA, pathogens like E. coli and others, and it turns them on. They proliferate like crazy, and then they go make more havoc in the gut. So more gut damage, right? Yeah. HPV, I suspect might be like that as well too, because normally it's quiescent, it's benign. Only when it's threatened will it, our pathogens may switch. They're not necessarily going to be damaging to us, but they switch when we are stressed. So our heart-gut axis has to do with the polyvagal theory by Stephen Porges. If any people in the audience are fans, he's a really great read. We implement a lot of their clinical protocols by Deb Dana and Stephen Porges, because hundreds of million years ago, mammals diverged from other four-legged animals, right? Reptiles, birds, whatever. And we developed actually something known as apart from the dorsal vagal nerve, we have a ventral vagal nerve.
Ventral would be stuff here, right? Dorsal
back
would be in the front.
No, I think ventral's back. Okay, you're right. So yeah, you're right. So it innervates like the whole front and our heart.
Okay.
And it's myelinated. So it's really different than the rest of the vagal nerve. The rest of the vagal nerve is not myelinated. So for speed, precision, and quickness to deliver signal, it's myelinated.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason it diverged like that was because there's all these predators, dinosaur predators and other quick, fast predators, right? And mammals had to learn how to care for themselves, elderly and other vulnerable babies, and they communicated, they had cooperation, they had creativity, they had a way to survive and thrive outside of the larger predators, like whatever was around at the time during the dinosaur age and other times of evolution. And we had a tremendous gift of voice and all the senses, touching and sounds, cooing and touch, cuddling, to soothe and co-regulate everyone's nervous system. So recently I had a client and a friend, colleague, Dr. John Chung. He's a neuro-chiro. So he's like a functional neurology chiro, one of the best. And he heals everyone's vagal nerve and all that. But he was, his HRV was tanked. And then he had this like emergent, gut thing. He had an obstruction that required surgery. But a lot of his gut problems had, started earlier, he had told me, right? And he went from HRV 50-60 to doubling it to 90 to 110. And I had him do an oxytocin exercise. We do this with all our clients and in our group. Do mutual massage 3 times a week with their partner or a friend. It could be a friend with clothes on, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And we engage love languages.
Mm-hmm. Love that.
Social creatures. Yeah, we co-regulate neurologically. And it's so important for the gut. We get instant gut healing, and the pathogens that are lit up, they calm down, they go quiescent. And then let's say H. pylori's and Candida, it'll calm down. We can even lower fungal, I believe, growths this way as well too. And we don't, we're missing this. We get busy. We got little kids. We got parents to take care of. We travel, work, whatever, right? So he implemented this 20 minutes 3 times a week, or at least I told him a minimum of two, once or twice a week at least. I think he ended up doing it 2 or 3 times a week with his wife. It was so beautiful. And I had them give words of affirmation to each other during the 20 minutes. Say, hey, oh, I loved it when you put your hand on my shoulder. I felt so touched and cared for when you looked at me in the eyes. Or, oh, when you did the dishes, I loved it when you did that. I felt so cared for, and burdens of my work, lifted up. Things like that, right? And then if they use essential oils, then you're engaging smell and a little bit of taste. Taste and smell are kind of aligned like that. And in terms of love languages, we're such, high, sophisticated, cultured, and sophisticated communication for social beings. We have love languages, right? We don't want to ignore them, and who knows really what they are for everybody. But time spent together, that's quality time, right? It's a gift to give a massage to one another. A mutual, there's safety. Yeah, there's safety and reciprocity. For gut healing, safety is actually the treatment.
Yeah.
We're lowering pathogens. Yeah, we have protocols. We do concurrent protocols. We're lowering yeast, and we're lowering, yeast and molds, and lowering bacterial overgrowths at the same time. And a lot of people have viral overgrowths, all the co-infections and viral things, Epstein-Barr, CMV, HHV6, parvo, all of them, so we have protocols that gently lower that. Fortunately, a lot of these antivirals are also antifungal. So we're hitting 2 mechanisms of action together. So I love my pharmacy background. That helps me, create these protocols for that. So we're getting all the love languages because we're these, immaculate social creatures. The quality of time, words of affirmation, an act of service.
Yeah.
Some people don't care about gifts or touch. They don't want to be touched. But the act of service is important to them. And their heart can go into a safe zone, right? Yeah. And that's the treatment. That's the gut treatment. And then what comes out of that? Spikes of oxytocin. As you know, we love peptides and injectables. You can inject it, you can stick it up your vagina, you can rectally put oxytocin, you can nasal it, it's over the counter on Amazon, right? So many ways to get oxytocin, or a pill, whatever. But the best is if we make it ourselves. And then our probiotics, guess what? They make it too. I think they love to have a safe space, haven. They don't want to live when there's havoc and candida running rampant, right? So there's this like harmony of our ecosystem that can be created, and it's gut healing. That's something different about our protocols, because we're taking in account the whole nervous system. Our gut is one of the biggest nervous systems outside of the brain. It's probably the best one, better than the brain. Even Einstein doesn't like the head. Einstein said, he has a variety of quotes that are so great. We ignore our heart, and then all kinds of things go to shit after that. We can't ignore our heart. Yeah, and the heart gut axis is one of the most important for longevity, I feel. If you look at centenarians, who survives, right? Those that have extended family
and community.
And community, both. They feel cared for, they feel safe.
Yeah.
And reciprocity. They've given their whole life, and now the community, family are giving back, grandchildren, and they're wisdom keepers. They hold, wisdom is medicine. They are the medicine people of the tribe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that answer, because I think that what guys, like Grace has been great. I'm very grateful that Grace has been helping me in terms of rebalancing my microbiome in certain ways. And, it's truly a holistic approach, right? You've got, not only do you have, like, I'm not just sitting there taking a bunch of probiotics, because I'm taking a couple of different ones, but there's the antimicrobials, there's taking care of the adrenals. There's so many different pieces to this protocol. And there's okay, Nat, you're going to spend 20 minutes 2 to 3 times a week with your massage. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I don't have time for this, right? And it's like, but when you think about it, you're like, well, hold on a second. Like, and if you think back to when you first met your partner and how much time you would spend in those times physically touching each other, whether, it didn't have to be sex. It could be cuddling. watching TV, lying on stacked on top of each other, taking a shower, like whatever it is. Like if you think back to those days, and how like how many people do you know get into a new relationship, they drop all kinds of weight, they start to glow, they feel amazing, their health starts to like become amazing. It's not a coincidence. Like what you're talking about is you're addressing the whole ecosystem, that it's not just about the microbiome. It has to do with the environment that the microbiome is in, which is us. Like it's, we're always looking to the outside saying, oh, I got to get rid of the MFs, I got to get rid of toxins. And that is true. But this gut brain and gut heart axis, that is the internal environment, like the chemical soup that we create by our state, has a huge impact, which is really what you're saying, which I don't think nearly enough people are talking about.
Well, you talk about state, and HRV, you are talking about it.
Yeah.
The habits to, sustain that and bring it up. I think it's so beautiful. Yeah. And we need it. We need those. They help so much. And we can make it ourselves.
Totally. Yeah. And we both know, like, whatever we can make ourselves is going to be better than, it's like using, and I mean, this isn't totally making it yourself, but if you're using a growth hormone secretagogue to improve the body's own production of growth hormone, how much more powerful is that versus doing an injection of synthetic growth hormone, which kind of circumvents your body's own systems. It shuts down your own production. It kind of sets you up for trouble down the road. And it becomes much harder to calibrate when is too much and when is too little, where when you can get the body to do it itself.
Exactly. We're seeing those pitfalls. Yeah. And the same with like, using, we're in functional medicine, people that some of the practitioners just love, it's a knee-jerk reaction. They want to give a prescription for rifaximin. That's one of the worst antibiotics ever. It's killing both gram-negative and gram-positive bacteria. It's like all your bacteria are going to get wiped out. And it's so pharmaceutical now, like they killed this, they had a study say, oh, it doesn't grow yeast. Well, you didn't run the fucking right test on it. Of course it's going to grow yeast. Every client I know who's had any amount of rifaximin are just full of yeast. It's coming out of the eyeballs and ears and vaginas and butts. Like, of course it creates yeast. So anything too pharmaceutical, we're getting into trouble. But when they're bioidentical rhythms and bioidentical mimicry, I think we're getting there. And I'm so grateful for the peptides because I glutenized myself last fall, and I couldn't get myself out of my fucking hole. I couldn't lose an ounce. And then I was, looking at the peptides. I was like, okay, well, I was like eating like an asshole in Vegas with you. So that didn't help. And I thought I'd be okay. But then I needed help. Yeah. So I got on to like some fabulous, peptides, which brought me to where I am, I knew they were great. Like I taught about it in February and March, and I knew it's the next part. And the favorite ones I love are all the Sun-derived peptides.
The LL37.
Yeah. And PT141 and, all the melanotans.
Melanotan family.
Yeah. It's like, and they heal mold toxicity. They make people feel awesome.
Yeah.
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 I didn't look up if PT141 spikes up oxytocin, but I mean, people feel so awesome. Like,
well, some people do. I mean, the alpha MSH peptides, which is what we're talking about, they're a bit of a double-edged sword. I mean, some people, and this is something we were talking about earlier, even when you're talking about a peptide, like for example, semaglutide these days, that, people are running around singing its praises saying, oh my God, it's so good. It helps people to lose weight. It benefits all kinds of metabolic imbalances, this, that, and the other thing. But like anything else, not everybody responds well to it. And PT141, I mean, I would say there's almost equal parts in my group, people who use PT141 strategically with their partners and have a great night, and other people who've tried and just end up feeling nauseous. Not everybody responds the same way to these things. And I think that, people like you and even me to a degree, like we're out there waving a flag going, yes, peptides are amazing. And not everybody's going to respond in the same way, no matter how great a peptide it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a science, certainly, for sure, dialing more in. What do you think the biggest factor is? The immunity, the profile for immunity?
Yeah, I think it depends on the person. I think people, for sure, people with underlying EBV, Lyme, like those co-infections, their brain is completely disrupted. And so they're the ones very often who have they have the wonky responses to peptides. The other one I think that really affects the way people respond to peptides is if they have heavy metal imbalances, right? This is affecting your biochemistry. Like it's affecting how the chemistry in your body responds to different things, or there may be receptors that are blocked. There might be a genetic piece, right? Like that comes to it. But I do think for the most part, it's probably the underlying conditions that people are not aware of, which isn't to say that those people can't use peptides. They just have to be smarter. They have to go lower and slower than everybody else.
Right. I'm seeing like the MOTS-C, the mitochondrial targeted ones, the anti-inflammatory ones like KPV. If they're at low dose and then gradually titrated for these really delicate flowers, people with mold and co-infections or both, and heavy metals or not, they tend to respond way, way better. And even with BPC, our Wolverine cocktail, TB4 and BPC, it's going to kill them. Like they have to start so low or even like sublingually, like delicately and titrated. But when they can be used, it seems like it's so powerful, worth it in some degrees. I love TB4. Yeah. So one study I was teaching on is the scalp study.
Yeah.
The scalp study.
Yeah.
And there's a plethora of microbiome studies for seborrheic dermatitis, which is basically dandruff.
Yeah.
100% of all our clients, when they come to us, have some version of some dandruff because of the fungal overgrowth, when we query them. And it's, they put TB4 topical head to head with our gold standard, which is a topical antifungal called ketoconazole.
Yeah.
Yeah. When they looked at stopping, so symptoms improved with both. And they looked at the microbiome studies. When TB4 was stopped, the symptoms didn't come back. And when they looked at the microbiome study, TB4 topical actually resurrected the microbiome in a healthy scalp biome, a skin biome.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's pretty remarkable. Like we don't see that in general, like maybe with bioidentical, but you'd be really lucky to see that. Or maybe with my protocols because we're hitting viral, fungal, and bacterial. Okay. Seborrheic dermatitis is a lot of things. It's strep. It's a lot of skin pathogens that are bacterial. It's also hugely Malassezia and other fungal overgrowths, yeast, a little bit of candida, but it's the skin yeast. So when they use the ketoconazole, they did see fungal populations go down, but made no dent in the bacterial populations that cause seborrheic dermatitis. And then as soon as they stopped, those fungal entities came back. Yeah. And all their symptoms came back.
So let me ask you about the TB4 topical. So how would you do that? Do you just reconstitute it in whatever and apply it, or do you?
I think I've only seen it compounded in a compounding pharmacy. So we'd have to ask like some of the labs, like how they would recommend. With integrated peptides, which I love, we use it topically by gut, orally. So it heals the gut and helps to resurrect. The dose is not very effective. We push it. I have people do 6 to 8 a day. It is not very cost effective.
No.
Yeah, not cost effective at all. I know. Same with BPC. Some of the labs have the acetylated. This is acetylated. And so orally, it's really great. It goes in. If it's an acetylated BPC in a vial, you can inject it into a fish oil cap. And they do this with equine medicine, horse veterinary medicine. This is how they get anti-inflammatory benefits in racehorses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so it works. So we can open this. NSAIDs will cause esophageal sphincter to loosen up and break.
This will fix it. The BPC.
Yeah. Open it up, or you take sublingual BPC, you squirt it in your mouth. I know Ben did it. It's actually legit, you guys, if you have an acetylated BPC in a vial. Some labs have that. So if you open this, you'll get the same effect. Not everybody tolerates BPC. Like I have moldy people, co-infection people, they hate this, and they fucking hate me after I gave it to them. I thought, oh, but we just start low, if that's the case. And we got to just grind it up really tiny, delicately until they can tolerate a little more. But it does happen. It does happen. And you don't want to push it because you can, these people are autoimmune. They have 15 million autoimmune diseases already, whether they're detectable or not. And you don't want to, this is a peptide. You don't want them allergic to this or their own BPC. So starting low, go slow is good, and doing the immune modulation. We do a couple things. This is the best immune modulator, getting the right probiotics. Sometimes this isn't for everybody, but it is for like 90% of people. So this is Microbiome Mojo.
Yeah, I have that.
Yes. It has 2 probiotics in one here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's got the Bifida Maximus, which is our signature product. We're kind of out right now, but and then it has a second category of spore-based, soil-based probiotic. They're bacilli. They're novel to the American market, and they pump out a bunch of good antioxidants and vitamins like B2, riboflavin. We get low when we have a lot of fungal overgrowths. Yeah, so the TB4 frag, this particular acetylated frag. I haven't opened it into a capsule, into water. You probably can and get healing topically. I think you could put this, there's fillers. I wouldn't do this one, but if you had the frag, like from CanLab, you could probably put it topically into some dosage form, like a gel or serum or lotion or aloe vera gel, or I don't know how stable it would be.
Well, I think that it would be interesting. I mean, even if you put it in aloe vera, I think that it would be interesting to see what it did.
Yeah.
Aloe itself has its own healing properties.
Absolutely.
The interesting thing about the integrative peptides TB4 is it's not the full, it's the fragments, it's different fragments of TB4, which is why they can be taken orally. If it was the whole TB4,
right,
it would get broken down. So
the 1 to 4 one frag.
That's the one. That's the one I'm actually using right now too, which is anti-fibrotic. I think it's got a few different ones in there.
Oh, really? Okay.
Okay, so let's. I'm trying to think. We don't have that much time left, and there's other things. Other things I wanted to talk. Maybe just to finish off, let's talk a little bit about the microbiome and the immune system, because by the time this podcast airs, we'll be moving back into winter, and immune support is going to be all over everybody's mind. And I think that if there's one thing that's been neglected over the last couple of years, it's how do we support our microbiome so that it can support our immunity?
Yes. So I really, the best studies we have for probiotics is on travelers' gastroenteritis and also antibiotic-induced, antibiotic-associated adverse effects like diarrhea, AAD, antibiotic-associated diarrhea, AAD. Probiotics are the best. You want to find a probiotic that works for you, that doesn't have side effects or problems. For healing, we tend to avoid probiotics that contain anything that has yeast, because we're battling yeast, and most people have antibodies to yeast. So we don't want to trigger that. It's just like if someone is allergic to gluten, we don't make them eat gluten 4 times a day.
Yeah.
We avoid gluten for a number of weeks, to heal the immune system. So we also avoid strep. Strep is a big overgrowth, and we can see it on GI map stool kits or other stool kits like Genova's or any other ones. Microbiome Labs probably has a really good one as well. We like to look at the oat. We presume everyone has strep. It's just so common. It's one of our skin and ear, nose, throat, and eye bacteria. It's supposed to be found in healthy amounts in healthy people. After antibiotics, that's not the case. It's overgrowing, and people usually have antibodies to it, try as a manner to try to eliminate it. The problem is those antibodies start to hit other nervous system tissues, or other organs. So you've heard of rubella. You've heard of like blindness related to scarlet fever or heart valve issues with that's all strep related. So we also see people with like personality changes and mood issues. It's all strep. So we avoid strep probiotics. And VSL number 1 is terrible, has such a high amount of strep. We completely have people not consider that. It's not very immune positive because of the strep component. And there's a couple other brands out there you want to read it, because it gets snuck in there. It's a very cheap probiotic. It's food-based and not human-based, and it'll be in there. It'll be not good for the immune system.
What?
What?
show up a streptococcus on the label?
Yeah, it'll say Streptococcus thermophilus is the common one, but we have a couple good ones that are shown to reverse cavities. But if someone is having the antibodies, if they take enough, like Strep salivarius, and there's a few others, they'll actually trigger their immune system and autoimmunity. And you want to avoid that because we're trying to heal the immune system. We don't want to do anything that will trigger. And it's only because I've seen this happen a number of times. I made this, kind of ban to use strep-containing probiotics for a number of time. But probiotics are shown, like, I know when I'm traveling, I don't get diarrhea. I take a lot of probiotics. I have a powder form too, and I'll just take a scoop every day. People go to Bali, they get Bali belly, or they go to a foreign country where they don't have hygienic water. They will get horrible diarrhea, if not even life-threatening diarrhea, where I've heard of people they shower in India and they happen to open their mouth, drink a little gulp of water. Oh my God, next thing they know, they're in the fucking ER, pooping out blood, and their health is irrevocably changed after that. They are not the same.
Yeah.
If you actually take probiotics, they're shown to help travelers' enteritis. All of them do. Most of them do, but ours are particularly because of the dose. It will help a lot. Now, for immune basis, there was like a flaxseed study against for coronavirus. Guess what? It worked. When you feed the flora, the good flora, you will be protected against all kinds of viruses, including all the common flu ones, respiratory viruses, and coronaviruses. Coronaviruses are all part of our living, situation since the dawn of time. Animals have it, we have it. It's not a common part of our influenza vaccine because there's something called cross-reactivity. When you are antiviral against influenza, you're not so viral against corona, and you're going to have a 2 to 5 times increased chance of getting it. So if you want really good immunity, don't get the flu vaccine. Is my thoughts for people. But talk to your doctor and your healthcare team.
I wanted to ask you, for the travelers probiotics, what about Saccharomyces boulardii so it's not a probiotic, it is a yeast, right?
Probiotics are anything that helps life.
Right. So with Saccharomyces boulardii that's what I usually travel with, because if I get diarrhea, I find that it stops it right away.
Yeah, it may help. There are probably better ways. If you check your ASCA, it's the anti-Saccharomyces cerevisiae antibody. We find it mild to heavily elevated in anyone with chronic health issues.
Right.
And it's just because it's the number 2, Candida and Saccharomyces are number 1 and number 2. They vie for the top fungal spot in our mycobiome. Myco means our yeast biome, or mold and fungal biome. So myco is MYCO. They kind of vie in there. It depends on the person. Yeah. So we tend to make antibodies to it. And there are different labs like Cyrix labs. They were the earliest to see, a lot of autism in the spectrum were antibodies against Candida, attacking the corpus callosum or parts of the brainstem or other parts of the brain. There's we see this molecular mimicry with all autoimmunity. It could be joint, could be thyroid, could be ankylosing spondylitis, could be PCOS is a form of autoimmunity. There's cysts that form because of an immune attack. And and even infertility, they find anti-sperm DNA, like we have all 50 shades of autoimmunity now. We just don't have a name for it.
Yeah. So, okay. So as we're winding down, I do want to leave people with an idea of the gut tests that you use. So you talked about the organic acids test that you really like. You talk about GI map. Are there others that people should be looking at, or are some better for something than others?
So there are a lot of tests out on market. We were joking. I'm a big, promoter of all of them. They're also sponsors for my event. So my company takes money from them. I like all of them, and they're all shitty. They're all terrible. We're in the dark ages of lab testing right now.
Yeah. I mean, we
do nothing.
I think a big piece of it is understanding that they're limited. It's a little bit like genetic testing, right? It gives you some information. It's not the holy grail. And if you put it all into context and take it with a grain of salt and have a professional guiding you, because they're more likely to be less, right. You have a coach or a practitioner working with you, they're not going to be absolute about stuff, right?
That's why I love teaching coaches how to read the available tests we have.
Yeah.
Everything we do focus on our heart, our gut, our immune system. 80% of our immune system is in our gut. In fact, it probably is our flora.
Yeah.
They turn on and on all the levers. They make antimicrobial peptides. They make all kinds of signals. They also make crap that block receptors. Like literally, they can make crap that block glucose receptors and insulin receptors, as well as thyroid receptors, and even serotonin receptors. Like they make a lot of pollution and crap if you don't have the right ones in there. They also make wonderful things to clear out the crap. And so testing, I like the organic acid test. It's not ideal because it won't tell you your species available that are there. They only look at the markers that come from the flora, good and bad, and the ones that make it to the blood that make it also to the urine after filtration and that you urine out. But what I love about it is it shows us oxalates and the degree of fungal versus bacterial overgrowth. Everyone's tends to have it, if they're not ideal, lean and happy, healthy people, and, any kind of chronic disease will interface with the microbiome, and the markers will show it. And anyone with chronic malabsorption, you'll see it. There's like 10 or 12 nutrient markers. We really want them down the middle, and we want all the protein to be absorbed well. The last page shows us calcium phosphate and the proteins, and really rarely do people have all the digestive enzymes and acid on board to get perfect digestion where they don't need amino acids. So I like the test because it gives us our antioxidant markers, our nutritional chronic malabsorption, picture. You don't have to run a SpectraCell or other stuff like, fancy stuff like that. And you see the first 9 markers are fungal. The other 9 markers, 10 to 18, are bacterial. Right. And then you can get a picture of just, there are enterotypes. Some are more heavy on mold and fungal. Others are more heavy on the bacterial side, strep and Pseudomonas and, skin and other ones, Klebsiella for autoimmunity. So, but everyone's got all of them. And that's why it's great to work with a practitioner who might know our protocols, because you want to also look at the viral component. This test will not tell you the viral component. When you pull a conventional lab, if you're looking at white count being really devastatingly low, or immune, problems like with iron, because you have a co-infection that is eating up all the iron in the red blood cells, then the viral and co-infection picture really becomes more open. And what we're looking at immunity, because 80% of immunity is the gut or the flora there. We want to look at immune patterns. So I like looking at antibodies. This is how our immune system is flexing.
Right.
Strengthen and condition it. If it's making too many antibodies, the wrong antibodies, it's not so good for longevity. It's not detrimental. I was looking at a couple centenarian studies, like there's a group of centenarians, hardly any autoantibodies. And then there's another group of really healthy centenarians somewhere. They had tons of autoantibodies, didn't mean shit. But for my purposes, we'll see the autoantibodies to Candida and yeast, the ASCA marker, which LabCorp will run to, and anti-Candida markers. I like the Great Plains one because you just poke yourself and then you get the whole anti-Candida picture. But we'll see these antibodies improve. For a while, I tracked mine because I got myself into trouble again. And then I was tracking my antibodies every month. I had like high fucking fungal antibodies, and then they normalized, but it takes time. And so we don't check those too often. It literally, takes 6 months probably. And same with the oat. After we check it once, we're not going to check it again. It's forever to fix the oat.
Right. Interesting. And so
our terrain is as big as a tennis court. I think actually when it's broken, it's like a football field. It's forever to fix it. That's why it is ideal for people to go through 4 phases. Look at oxytocin, look at HRV, relationships in the heart, what forgiveness do we need to offer people that we've hurt, or forgive people who have hurt us, and get the safety, the reciprocity. We have to be reciprocal to ourselves. Some people are so terrible in their inner talk, right? They're worse to themselves than they would be to their dog or, their friends. Like, what the fuck? You have to take care of your heart. It's attached to your gut, and you will never heal immunity if that negative talk is going on.
Yeah, well, it's part of that stress environment for sure. So, all right, we have 10 minutes left. So you talk about the oats test. Are there any poop tests that you consider to be good? So is it
are fabulous? I mean, I would run the Genova on everybody, but it's honking like $500, $700 cash, right? The GI map is great. It's like $500. The Great Plains has a really simple CDSA parasite panel
Yeah.
I mean, all of them are kind of stools are all kind of useless. We run thousands on, I've looked at thousands and run like hundreds and hundreds. They're all the same, it's the same stuff all the time. The poop is the worst because it's the last meter and a half of the gut. You can't really even begin to know anything about the upper gut, ear, nose, throat, where we have a lot of disease happening in the interface of our small intestine is where the interface of health happens. But we have no really good way except for the organic acid.
Okay.
Because whatever is going there will end up in the blood and urine at some point, but we just don't know the species. We have to do presumptive based on microbiome studies where they match the disease to the microbiome pattern. They're all about the same, they're not that far off, and really it's the depletions, just as someone's building a wealth portfolio, you got to have the right things that are asset building and dividend, building over time and compounding if possible. That's the same with our gut. We want to make sure what's there. And what's so lovely about the gut is once we get them in there, these do the work.
Right.
These are viral, these are antifungal, these are antibacterial, these are anti-coronavirus for us. When they're fed well, they make peptides. They're known as AMPs. We've known about these for like, over 50 years. The AMPs are powerful. When we feed them, they make even spiral ones and loopy, round circular peptides. I mean, we don't have peptides like that, right? But they're circular, they're powerful, and they're even anti-Borrelia, anti-Lyme.
Nice.
Someday we'll probably get the little jabby, but until then, if we get them in here, we'll feed them.
So you're holding up your Microbiome Mojo there. And then I guess also like the varied diet is the other way to cultivate.
Yeah. It's very hard to unlike that TB4 topical study, gut is a little different. It's hard to resurrect what's not there.
Correct. Yeah. So a combination of the colonizing with then the food that feeds it and encourages it to stick around, really.
Yes. And then getting a peptide rhythm, right? Working with you and getting that peptide rhythm and learning how to do that. Yeah. There's all these levers we can just optimize.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. So Miss Grace, where can people find you? Because you have a bunch of education on your website, which is thegutinstitute.com. You sell amazing products, but you also offer either through yourself or through your coaches, one-on-one consults so that people can start to really navigate based on what's going on with them. What is it that they're going to need to kind of find their balance again?
Yeah, exactly. They'll get some customized protocols or in our class. I'm at thegutinstitute.com.
Yeah.
And on Facebook, we do Facebook Lives a lot. You can see our vault of different topics, and usually it's Tuesday, 2:00 Pacific and 5 o'clock Eastern.
Nice.
You'll see me there. If you have questions, just come and ask me.
So the Facebook page is the Gut Institute?
Institute Facebook page, right? Exactly.
And on Instagram, the Gut.
Yeah, yes.
Yes. And guys, there's, you can also go to thegutinstitute.com/Nat. And there's an array of beautiful products there for you to look at. But definitely, I would really recommend people do a consult with someone before they just, willy-nilly start throwing things into their gut, because I've learned this from you and I've learned this from so many other people that we're not all the same and we don't all need the same thing at the same time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm so grateful for you, Natalie, for all my peptide thoughts and training and guidance. You've helped me to cut some of the gut protocols in half.
You did?
The peptides. Yes. So just in deep, deep gratitude to you. Thank you for blessing my life and my practice.
And to you, you're fixing my gut, which has been, kind of this mess for a long time. So thank you for all your help. So
my pleasure.
Grace, we will be back here. I'm pretty sure we will do another episode at some point. So thank you so much for your time today.
Would love it. Can't wait. Thank you.